Welcome to Storytime with Pops, where every quiet story carries a hidden truth. Here, we uncover the pain of betrayal, the cost of greed, and the moment justice finally comes home. So sit back, listen close, and let Pops tell you a story you won't forget. My brother sold Pops' bait shop while Pops lay in a stroke ward, then told everyone I was greedy for asking questions. He thought the doc was already his, but the old camera above the ice chest recorded the forged will. The bait shop smelled wrong before I saw the sign. For 43 years, Pops' bait and tackle smelled like salt, coffee, old rope, minnows, sun-baked cedar, and the faint bite of diesel from the boats tied along the dock. That smell was my childhood. It was Pops waking me before dawn, telling me the fish did not care if children wanted sleep. It was my mother counting change behind the register. It was my brother pretending to be too good for worms, then spending every summer begging tourists for tips. But that Tuesday morning, the air outside the shop smelled like fresh paint. Fresh paint meant strangers. I had driven straight from Anne's medical center after spending the night beside Pop's bed. His stroke had stolen half his speech and left his right hand curled against the blanket like it was holding onto a rope no one else could see. He could still understand. I knew because every time spoke, Pop's eyes went sharp. Every time I leaned close, he blinked once for yes, twice for no, like we had agreed. The front door of the shop had a new lock. A red banner hung across the window. Coming soon, AITA Seafood Market. Under it, in smaller letters, a leasing company name I did not recognize. My key did not turn. I stood there with Pop's hospital blanket still folded in the passenger seat of my truck and tried the key again because denial is the body's first painkiller. The deadbolt held. A gull screamed from the roof as if mocking me. Then the side door opened and stepped out wearing a navy blazer over a shirt too white for a doc. My brother had always dressed like a man auditioning for trust. Behind him came his wife, holding a folder against her chest. Had the kind of face that made church ladies say she was put together, which meant she knew how to cry without smudging mascara. Said, "You shouldn't be here." I looked at the window again. What is this? His mouth tightened. A transition. That's what people call theft when they paid for signage. Inhaled sharply, already preparing to be wounded. Looked toward the marina, checking for witnesses. Two charter captains paused near the fuel pump. A retired sheriff sat in his truck, pretending not to listen. Dad signed the papers, said loudly. Before the stroke, he made his wishes clear. Pops had not made anything clear too, except that he trusted him less than the ice machine. "Show me the papers." Clutched the folder tighter. "This is exactly why he cut you out." The words landed like a hook under the ribs. "Cut me out of what?" Lowered his voice. "The will." For a moment, everything narrowed to the wet boards beneath my shoes. The dock moved with the tide. The boats creaked. A crab trap knocked against a piling. Ordinary sounds kept going as if my life had not just split open. "Pops is alive. And he prepared for this," said. "He knew you'd make it ugly." But added soft enough to seem kind, "Grief and stress make people desperate. We don't blame you." There it was, the first layer of the cage. If I fought, I was desperate. If I asked questions, I was greedy. If I raised my voice, they would call it proof. I looked past them through the window. The old counter was covered in plastic sheets. The Polaroids of fishing tournaments were gone. The freezer case was empty. Someone had taken down the framed photo of Pops holding a striped bass taller than me when I was 9. Then I saw one thing still in place. Above the ice chest, half hidden behind the faded sign that said bait cash only, the old dock camera still blinked red. Pops installed it after teenagers stole beer from the cooler in 2008. Had called it paranoid. Had called it tacky. Pops called it a witness with no favorite child. Followed my gaze and shifted one step to block the window. Too late. I put my key back in my pocket and made my face go blank. Pops once told me a fish only bites when it thinks the hook is food. So I let think I was beaten. I had spent so many years believing family betrayal would announce itself with shouting that I almost missed the quiet parts. The printed banner, the new lock, folder held tight against her ribs. voice pitched just loud enough for the marina to hear that I was the unstable one. They had not only taken the shop, they had built the story of why I deserved to lose it before I ever arrived. Invited me to lunch because villains love neutral tables. She chose the Mariner's Room, a waterfront restaurant with white napkins, tiny portions, and prices that made fishermen whisper curses into their menus. Said he had a meeting with buyers, which was a strange word to use when discussing a family business he claimed had legally become his. Arrived alone, carrying the same folder. She ordered tea, I ordered coffee and did not drink it. She said, "We want peace." People who want peace do not change locks, while an old man lies in a stroke ward. What you want is silence. Her smile barely moved. That kind of hostility is exactly what worried Pops. She slid papers across the table, copies, never originals. A will-naming sole beneficiary of the bait shop, dock rights, storage shed, and waterfront lot. A medical directive giving authority if Pops became incapacitated. A statement saying I had been financially unstable and emotionally volatile and should receive only a small cash gift from an account I did not know existed. My name appeared like a bruise. There was Pop's signature at the bottom. It looked almost right. That was the cruelty of it. Whoever forged it knew his hand trembled slightly after arthritis settled in. The P looped too low, the final S dragged, but the slant was wrong. Pops wrote like he was leaning into the wind. This signature stood straight, careful, rehearsed. "This is fake." Placed her hand over her heart. "Do you hear yourself?" "Yes. Clearly." The doctors said Pops may not recover enough to manage affairs. Had to move quickly. The sale happened before the stroke, according to you. Her fingers tightened around the teacup. Small mistake, small crack. I kept my face calm. Which is it? Did Pops sign everything before the stroke, or did have to move quickly after? She recovered fast. Both can be true, there were stages. Fraud always has stages. That does not make it legal. She leaned closer, lowering her voice to a tone meant to sound merciful. You need to think about your reputation. Everyone knows you borrowed money after the divorce. Everyone knows you moved back into the old apartment above the shop. If you challenge this, we'll have to explain why Pops didn't trust you. My divorce, my apartment, my debts from a medical bill after my son's accident. She had arranged the knives by size. Pops let me live above the shop because I took night shifts after Mom died. That may be how you remember it. There it was again, the soft murder of memory. Opened the folder and removed a printed message thread. My texts to Pops from 2 years earlier, asking if I could delay rent. Screenshots without replies, without context, without the week Pops had pneumonia and I was buying his medicine because was in posting photos of lobster dinners. You see how it looks, she said. I see how you cropped it. Her eyes cooled. For the first time, the mask slipped, and I saw the woman beneath the tea and sympathy. Not frightened, not guilty. Annoyed. You are not going to ruin this for us, she said. Ruin what? She smiled again, but now it had teeth. Your brother's future. When she left, she paid for both drinks in cash, like generosity could cover extortion. I sat there until the waitress asked if I needed anything else. I needed my father's voice back. I needed my mother alive. I needed my brother to be the boy who once cried when Pops sold his first fishing rod instead of the man who had sold the whole dock. Instead, I had photocopies, threats, and a blinking red camera above an ice chest. That would have to be enough to start. When I walked back to my truck, I understood why I had picked that restaurant. The white tablecloths, the harbor view, the waitress refilling cups like nothing ugly could happen there. If I had raised my voice, she would have had witnesses. If I had cried, she would have had pity. If I had, she would have had victory. So I left the coffee untouched and let her think the meeting had worked. Pops blinked twice when I said the word will. No. His hospital room smelled of disinfectant, plastic tubing, and the orange gelatin cups he refused to eat. Sunlight came through the blinds in pale stripes across his blanket, his mouth slightly on one side. His right hand remained curled, but his left eye, the stubborn one, tracked every word. I pulled the chair close, and opened my notebook. Did you sign a new will leaving the bait shop too? 2 blinks. No. Did you authorize him to sell the property? 2 blinks. No. Did you cut me out? He closed his eyes. For a second, panic punched through me, then one tear slipped down into his ear. I took his left hand. It's okay. That was a lie. It was not okay. Nothing in that room was okay. My father had spent his life speaking with his whole body, cursing at tangled nets, laughing too loudly, slapping the counter when a fish story got impossible. Now his truth had to travel through eyelids. He squeezed my fingers once. Yes. Pops, I saw the dock camera still running. His eye opened. 1 blink. Yes. You want me to check it? 1 blink. Then his gaze moved toward the bedside table. A plastic bag held the clothes the hospital cut from him the night of the stroke. Shirt, belt, socks, the old canvas jacket he wore even in summer because it had useful pockets. I pulled the bag over and searched the jacket. Receipts, peppermints, a marina fuel token, a folded photo of Mom. Finally, in the inside pocket, I found a brass key taped to a bait license from 1997. Under the tape, in Pop's blocky handwriting, were 3 words. Freezer falls back. My throat tightened. How long have you known? I whispered. Pop stared at me. His left hand trembled. I got out the alphabet board the speech therapist had left. It was slow work, painful work. I pointed to rows and letters. He blinked once for yes, twice for no. After 10 minutes, we had 4 words. TRVIS, BOTH, NOTARY, NIGHT. Night. They had come at night. I wrote everything down. Pops watched me like writing itself was a lifeline. A nurse entered to check his blood pressure. She smiled at me, then at Pops. Your son called. He asked that visits be limited so you can rest. My body went cold. Did he now? He's listed as primary contact. By whom? She looked uncomfortable. It's in the chart. I glanced at Pops. His jaw worked. A low sound came from his throat, half growl, half broken word. The nurse heard it too. Mister, are you upset? Pops blinked once. Yes. I asked the nurse to note that in the chart. She hesitated. I gave her my calmest stare, the one Pops taught me to use on suppliers who tried charging for missing shrimp. She wrote it down. After she left, I leaned close to Pops. They're trying to keep me away. 1 blink. Yes. Did you leave anything else besides the camera? His eye moved again, this time toward the television mounted on the wall. At first, I did not understand. Then I remembered the old shop DVR. Pops never watched television at work. He used the tiny office monitor to check the dock camera. The remote control for it looked like a cheap TV remote, and he kept a duplicate in the freezer room because he trusted cold storage more than drawers. Freezer falls back. I kissed his forehead. He hated forehead kisses. That day he let me rest, I said. Pop squeezed my hand once. No. Of course not. Rest was what men like wanted from us. Pops wanted evidence. Before I left the hospital, Pops pulled weakly at my sleeve. It took me a moment to understand. He wanted the notebook. I placed the pen in his left hand, but his fingers could barely close. He scratched one crooked line across the page, then another. Not letters, not words, a shape, a hook, then a box, the shop, the camera. The message was clumsy, but it was clear enough. Do not waste time feeling wounded when evidence is waiting. I waited until midnight because the harbor sleeps badly. There is always someone awake near water. A deckhand smoking behind a shed, a bartender dumping ice, a teenager with nowhere to go. I parked 2 blocks away behind the laundromat and walked to the bait shop with my hood up, carrying Pop's brass key in my sock because would expect pockets. The front lock was new, but the freezer room had its own service hatch. Pops built it after Hurricane Gloria flooded the back storage and ruined $2,000 worth of bait. It looked like a vent panel from outside. If you pressed the lower left screw and lifted, the whole thing swung out on hidden hinges. Knew about it when we were kids. Also forgot anything that did not immediately benefit him. The hatch groaned. I slid inside and landed hard on the freezer room floor, knocking my elbow against a crate of chum. The smell hit me first. Blood-bait freezer burn, old ice, familiar, honest, awful. The chest freezer against the wall had a metal strip along the back. I felt underneath until my fingers found a groove. The false panel lifted. Inside was a zippered bank pouch, a spare DVR remote, 2 flash drives, and a note from Pops. If TRAVIS brings paper after dark, do not argue with paper. Ask the doc what IT saw. I sat on an overturned bucket and pressed the note against my chest. Pops had known his own son was circling. Maybe he had known longer than I wanted to admit. In the office, the DVR sat under a dusty monitor beside a coffee mug full of dead pens. The screen came alive when I pressed power. 4 camera views appeared: front door, dock, register, freezer hall. The date in the corner made my pulse jump. 3 nights before Pop's stroke. I rewound. At 11:42 p.m., entered through the side door. Followed. With them came a woman I recognized from town hall, Gloria, a notary who wore turquoise necklaces and posted Bible verses under photos of wine glasses. Behind her was Andrew Pike, the attorney who had once handled my divorce badly enough that I should have predicted his next moral achievement. The dock camera caught them through the window reflection. Carried Pop's old lockbox. Carried a bottle of bourbon. I watched them go into the office. The register camera had no sound, but it had angles. Placed papers on the desk. Andrew pointed. Gloria stamped. Signed something, then took Pop's left hand from where he sat slumped in the office chair. I stopped breathing. Pops was there. Alive, awake maybe, not right. His head, his mouth hung open. A plastic hospital bracelet was not on him yet, which meant this was before the stroke was discovered, before the ambulance, before any doctor could say he understood legal documents. Held his wrist while guided a pen into his fingers. They moved his hand. They signed for him. I made a sound that did not belong to any language. The camera did not care. It kept recording. At 12:06, Pops tried to stand. The chair rolled back. He grabbed the desk, face twisted, one side of his body collapsing. Caught him. For one bright second, I thought my brother would call for help. Instead, snatched the papers from the desk. Andrew backed away. Gloria covered her mouth, lowered Pops back into the chair and shouted silently at. She pointed toward the papers. He pointed at Pops. She pointed again. Minutes passed. Pops slumped. Finally, at 12:19, took out his phone. The ambulance arrived at 12:31. By then, had already left with the forged will. I the footage onto both flash drives, then onto my phone. My hands shook so badly, I dropped one under the desk. When I reached for it, I saw a folded document taped beneath the drawer. Pop's real will. At the bottom, in his steady older signature, was one line written by hand. If my sons fight over the shop, let the truth decide who deserves the key. I sat in the dark office, surrounded by bait, ghosts, and video evidence, and finally let the anger come. I almost took the real will and ran before copying the footage twice. That was panic talking. Pops hated panic because panic made honest people sloppy and dishonest people lucky. So I forced myself to breathe, labeled the flash drives with a marker, photographed the DVR screen, photographed the false back, photographed the note, then put every visible thing exactly where I found it. If wanted to call me unstable, I would answer with timestamps. By sunrise, had already posted a statement. Family update, Dad's medical situation has forced some painful decisions. Pop's, bait and tackle, has been legally transferred according to his wishes. My brother is struggling with this change, and we ask everyone not to engage with rumors while we protect Dad's dignity. Protect Dad's dignity. He had moved Pop's hand over a forged will while our father was having a stroke. There were hearts under the post, prayer hands, comments from people who bought bait from Pops for 30 years. You're doing the right thing. Family inheritance brings out greed. Stay strong. Commented a single broken heart emoji. It received more likes than the truth would get without proof. I spent the morning making copies. My printer twice. My hands kept trembling. I had footage, the real will, the note from the freezer, hospital timelines, and screenshots of public lies. But evidence is not the same as safety. Had money, had charm, and Andrew Pike had a law degree coated in slime. I called 3 attorneys. The first was unavailable. The second represented Seafood Market and hung up too quickly. The third was a woman named Cole, whose website had no smiling stock photos and whose voicemail said, "If this is elder exploitation, leave details and dates." I left details and dates. She called back in 19 minutes. "Do not confront them alone," she said after I described the footage. "I wasn't planning to." "What were you planning?" I looked at a post still glowing on my screen. "Something public." Sighed, but not with disapproval. Public exposure feels satisfying. Legal exposure holds. We need both, in that order only if necessary. I met her 2 hours later at a coffee shop out of town. She watched the footage without interrupting. When the video showed guiding Pop's hand, her mouth tightened. When Pop started to collapse and grabbed the papers first, paused it and leaned back. "That," she said, "is going to haunt a courtroom." Good, I thought. Let it haunt every room they entered. Filed an emergency petition before lunch. Injunction against the sale, challenge to the will, request for preservation of video evidence, notice to the hospital, and a demand that a visitation authority be reviewed. She also contacted Adult Protective Services. By evening, news. He called 17 times, called 6. Andrew Pike emailed calling my actions reckless, defamatory, and emotionally unstable. Forwarded it to me with one sentence, "Save this idiot's emails." At 8:04 p.m., came to my apartment above the shop. I had not been back since the lock change, but got temporary access through the landlord of the marina building. The apartment was small, with a slanted ceiling and windows that rattled when boats passed. Pops let me live there after my divorce. Called it freeloading. Pops called it family paying rent in care. Pounded on the door. "Open up." I did not. His voice floated from the stairwell. "Honey, don't. He wants a scene." He hit the door again. "You think some blurry video changes anything? Dad wanted me to have it." I stood on the other side, holding my phone, recording. "You hear me?" he shouted. "You always wanted him to choose you. You always needed to be the loyal one. But loyalty doesn't pay property taxes." There it was, not grief, not burden, resentment. Hissed his name. Lowered his voice, but the door was thin. "If you play that footage," he said, "I'll tell everyone about the money you borrowed from Dad. I'll make you look like exactly what you are." "And what is that?" I asked through the door. "Silence." Then my brother answered, like he had been waiting years. "A failure, living above a bait shop." My hand tightened around the phone. He had forgotten the dock camera. Now he had forgotten the door was recording too. The cruelest thing about public lies is how quickly they borrow other people's goodness. Those comments under post were not all malicious. Some came from people who loved Pops, people who had eaten my mother's chowder, people who thought prayer hands were kindness, and counted on that. They weaponized decent people's instinct to comfort the first person who sounded hurt. The next morning, the hospital would not let me see Pops. A security guard stood near the nurses' station pretending he was there for everyone. He was not. When I gave Pops' room number, the nurse's face changed the way faces change when a computer says something cruel. "I'm sorry," she said. "Mr.'s primary contact has limited visitors." "I'm his son." "I understand." "No, you don't. His other son is under investigation for elder exploitation." The nurse glanced toward security. That was how fast version moved. By morning, I was the disturbance. Answered on the second ring, put me on speaker. "I did." She identified herself, cited the emergency filing, gave the case number, and asked the nurse to document that I had been refused access while the patient's capacity and alleged will were under review. The Word document did more than anger ever could. The charge nurse appeared in 3 minutes. I saw Pops 20 minutes later. He looked worse, one cheek hollow, lips dry, eyes furious. The television played a cooking show no one was watching. On the whiteboard, under family contact, a name was written in blue marker. I erased it and wrote mine beneath his. Pops watched. "Is that petty?" I asked. He blinked twice. "No." I pulled my chair close and showed him a still image from the dock camera. I did not show the worst part, not yet. I showed with the papers, Gloria with the stamp, with the pen. Pop's left hand trembled. "Did you know they were coming that night?" One blink. "Yes." "Did you invite them?" Two blinks. "No." "Did you drink with them?" His eyes sharpened. Two blinks. "No." Bourbon had carried bourbon. Pops hated bourbon. It was my mother's drink, and after she died, he said he would rather lick a battery than taste it again. "What did they give you?" "We used the alphabet board." Tea. Made tea, herbal tea, probably. Sympathy tea. Something to make an old man sleepy before they put a pen in his hand. I asked the nurse for a toxicology note. She said too much time had passed. Told me to ask anyway and document refusal if it came. Pop spelled one more word before fatigue dragged at him. R-U-B-Y. Ruby. At first I thought he meant the stone in Mom's old ring. Then I remembered Ruby, the woman who ran the charter office next door. Ruby had been Pop's friend for 20 years and his secret cigarette supplier for 6, though everyone pretended not to know. Ruby saw something. One blink. "Yes." When I left, I found waiting by the elevator. She wore beige, the color of respectable lies. "You upset him," she said. "You barred me from seeing him. We are trying to keep him calm." "No, you're trying to keep him quiet." Her eyes flicked toward the nurse's station. Audience check. Then the soft voice returned. "You need help. Breaking into the shop, harassing, making accusations from grief. It's not healthy. I have footage." For the first time, real fear crossed her face. Then she recovered. Footage can be misunderstood. "Not this." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "If you love Pops, you will stop dragging his final wishes through the mud. He's not dead." Her smile was small and terrible. "Not yet." The elevator opened. I stood there as she walked in and turned to face me, composed again before the doors closed. "Not yet." 2 words, 1 threat. This time, she had no idea the nurse behind her had heard everything. After left in the elevator, the nurse who had heard her threat pretended to adjust a supply cart until we were alone. Then she whispered, "I'm charting that." I nearly thanked her too intensely. She looked at me and said, "People think old men are easy to erase. My father taught me otherwise." It was the first kindness that day that did not ask me to make anyone comfortable. Ruby ran the charter office like a woman who had survived 3 hurricanes and 2 husbands by trusting neither forecasts nor men. Her office sat 20 feet from Pop's side door, painted turquoise, smelling of printer ink, sunscreen, and the cigarettes she claimed she no longer smoked. When I walked in, she looked up from a booking calendar and said, "Took you long enough. You know, I know your brother came here at midnight with that wife of his and a lawyer who sweats through linen." My knees almost weakened. Ruby locked the office door and flipped the sign to closed. "I saw them through the blinds," she said. "I was doing invoices. Pops called me earlier, said if showed up after dark, I should mind my business but keep my eyes open. That man never did understand. Those are opposite instructions." She pulled a cigarette tin from her desk drawer. Inside was a memory card. My back camera caught their cars. "Ruby, don't get sentimental. It makes me." We played the footage on her laptop. There was SUV at 11:38, stepping out with a tote bag. Andrew Pike's sedan, glorious hatchback. At 12:21, leaving alone, clutching the folder against her chest, moving fast. At 12:31, the ambulance lights flashed at the edge of the frame. Ruby paused it. She left before the ambulance took him. I had seen it on Pop's footage, but hearing someone else say it made the horror. "She took the papers first," I said. Ruby's mouth tightened. "I should called someone." "You didn't know." "I knew enough to record and not enough to act. That's a miserable amount of knowledge." I understood that too well. She handed me the memory card. There's more. 2 days earlier, came in asking if my camera worked, said there'd been break-ins. What did you tell her? I told her it was fake. Despite everything, I laughed. Ruby shrugged. People show you what they want when they think you can't see. Before I left, she gave me a second thing, a copy of a note Pops had left with her in an envelope labeled "If my boys act stupid." Inside was a single page. Ruby, if starts waving papers after I am sick or gone, tell to check the dock camera and the freezer. If starts waving fists, slap him and tell him to use his head. I do not want my sons destroying each other. But if one of them uses me to destroy the other, let the honest one be dangerous. Pops. My vision blurred. Ruby pretended to rearrange pens. He loved you both, she said. Did he? That question is grief being stupid. I folded the note carefully. Outside, the harbor was bright and cruelly beautiful. Tourists bought ice cream near the pier. A little boy held a fishing pole twice his height. Life kept moving, indifferent to forged wills and hospital threats. My phone buzzed. Hearing tomorrow. Judge granted temporary preservation order. Do not post video. A second message arrived from an unknown number. This is Gloria. I need to talk before ruins us all. Us all. I stared at the message and thought about's threat at the elevator. Not yet. Then I thought about Pop's note. Let the honest one be dangerous. I texted Gloria back. Public place. No, bring your notary book. Ruby's memory card felt than plastic should feel. Maybe because it held the missing minutes between suspicion and proof. Maybe because she had done what the rest of town had not. She had doubted the neat version. Not loudly, not heroically, but enough to save what she saw. Sometimes justice begins with a woman in a turquoise office deciding a strange midnight visit deserves a camera file instead of a shrug. Gloria chose the library. Not her office. The library, that told me she wanted quiet and witnesses. She sat in the local history section beneath a framed map of the original harbor, turquoise necklace trembling against her throat. Her notary book lay on the table like a confession that had not yet learned to speak. You're recording? She asked. Yes. I don't consent. Then leave. She did not. Instead, she opened the notary book to the night of the forged will. Pop's name was there. So was a thumbprint that looked smudged. So was a signature that had been entered in the wrong line, with ink darker than the rest. I didn't know he was having a stroke, she whispered. No, you just knew he was too impaired to sign. Her eyes filled. I had no patience for tears that arrived after evidence. Start talking. Gloria clasped her hands, called me. She said Pops wanted documents notarized urgently because he was afraid you'd pressure him. She said he was embarrassed about cutting you out and wanted it done privately. And when you got there, he seemed tired. Tired. Her face crumpled. He was slurring. He kept trying to say no, but said he had been drinking. Pops didn't drink bourbon. I know that now. You knew it then. Everyone in town knew. She flinched. Good. She admitted Andrew Pike had prepared 2 versions of the will, one giving the bait shop, one putting the property into a trust. Insisted on the version. Pops refused to sign, argued with him. Made tea, Pops became weaker. Gloria should have stopped everything. She did not. Why? I asked. She stared at the table. Because owed Andrew money. Andrew owed my husband money. Said once the sale closed, everyone would be made whole. There it was, not one betrayal, a little economy of greed. How much? I don't know exactly. Gloria, $40,000 for Andrew, $15,000 for us. $15,000 was the price of her stamp on my father's stolen life. She pushed a folder toward me, emails, texts, a voicemail transcript, copies of drafts Andrew sent. One message from made my skin go cold. He won't fight once the stroke is official. The younger one will look unstable if he objects. The younger one, me. She had planned my grief as a legal strategy. Gloria wiped her eyes. I'll testify. Because you're sorry. Because is blaming me. Honest at least. I gathered the papers. Will contact you. Please, I never wanted Pop's hurt. I stopped. There are sentences cowards use because they sound like remorse. I never wanted anyone hurt. I did not mean for it to go that far. I thought it would be fine. They say these things as if harm is measured by intention instead of impact. My father lay in his own shop while you watched them move his hand, I said. Want is no longer the interesting part. I left her there in the local history section, crying beneath a map of land men had stolen from other men centuries before any of us were born. Outside, I called. Please tell me you didn't threaten the notary, she said. I used verbs. Sharp ones. Accurate ones. She sighed, bring me everything. On the drive to her office, I passed Pop's shop. Its banners still covered the window, but someone had written in black marker across the bottom. Ask about the camera. Ruby, probably. I should have been angry. Instead, I smiled for the first time in days. On the way out, I passed a teenage boy at a computer printing a school project about local landmarks. On the screen was a photo of Pop's bait and tackle from years ago, flags snapping above the dock, Pop's grinning in the doorway. I wondered if he knew the place was being stolen while he wrote about history. Then I realized most history probably felt ordinary while the thieves were still inside it. The courthouse smelled like old paper, floor polish, and people pretending family crimes were civil matters. Arrived in a gray suit, wore navy, pearls, and devastation. Andrew Pike stood beside them with a leather briefcase and the damp confidence of a man who had not yet realized everyone could smell smoke. Gloria sat on the opposite side of the hall, staring into her lap. Handed me a bottle of water. Do not react to anything. To bait. My family runs a bait shop. Then you should recognize it. Inside, Judge looked like she had been born unimpressed. Presented the emergency petition. Disputed will, questionable video evidence, hospital timeline, attempted visitor restriction, pending sale. Andrew argued that I was an angry beneficiary trying to override Pop's clear wishes. Beneficiary, not son, not caregiver, beneficiary. Language can steal humanity faster than paperwork. Andrew said Pops had long intended to take over the shop because had business vision. I nearly laughed. Business vision had once involved selling glow-in-the-dark squid lures to tourists in January. Played only 30 seconds of the footage, enough to show Pops slumped in the chair, enough to show guiding his hand, enough to show taking the papers before the ambulance arrived. The courtroom changed temperature. Andrew stood. Your Honor, we object to this inflammatory and potentially edited material being introduced without authentication. The judge looked over her glasses. Mr. Pike, were you in that video? Andrew swallowed. That is not the authentication question, Your Honor. It is mine. Silence. Yes. Then sit down before you make me curious about why. He sat. The judge froze the sale, suspended authority under the contested documents, ordered preservation of all shop records and camera footage, restored my visitation access, and referred the matter to the district attorney's elder exploitation unit. His face did not move, but her hand tightened around a wrist until his fingers whitened. After the hearing, followed me into the hallway. He said, please. The word sounded wrong coming from him. I turned. He glanced then at the people nearby. He wanted privacy because privacy had always been where he performed best. No, I said. His eyes filled. You don't understand what did. There it was, the first rat leaving the first plank. What did do? He looked toward his wife. She was speaking to Andrew, jaw clenched. She said Dad was going to leave everything to you. She said you had manipulated him. She said if we didn't move first, we'd lose everything. You moved his hand, closed his eyes. I thought he had already agreed. You watched him collapse. His voice broke. I called the ambulance. After left with the papers. He covered his face with one hand, and for 1 second, I saw the boy who had once fallen off the dock and screamed until Pops jumped in fully clothed to save him. But grief is not a time machine. When lowered his hand, I said, Tell the DA, tell Pops if he ever wants to hear you, but don't tell me in a hallway and call it courage. appeared beside him. She said softly, "We need to go." He flinched. She saw me see it. Her eyes changed. Not fear this time. Calculation. The next move would be hers. That night I replayed the 30 seconds had shown in court. Not because I needed to torture myself, though maybe part of me did. I watched the judge's face in my memory instead. The moment she saw enough. The moment the room stopped treating this like siblings fighting over money and started seeing an old man being used as paperwork. Recognition did not heal anything, but it gave my anger a place to stand. Its next move was to accuse me of stealing from Pops. Of course it was. By Friday morning, a police report leaked to the local paper. Anonymous family sources claimed there were questions about missing cash from the bait shop apartment, unpaid rent, and pressure I allegedly placed on Pops to change his will before the stroke. The article did not name me, but small towns do not need names. They have porches. By noon, people crossed the street to avoid me. At the grocery store, Mrs. Talbot from church stared into my cart as if unpaid debts might be hiding behind the eggs. At the marina, one charter captain mumbled that inheritance could make people crazy. The retired sheriff, who had seen lock me out, suddenly developed a deep interest in tying knots whenever I passed. Had not lost the performance, she had changed the stage. That afternoon, Ruby called, "Get to the shop." "Why?" "Because your brother's wife is carrying boxes into the office with a man who looks like he bills by the lie. Told me not to enter. She called the court. She called the DA. Ruby and I watched from the charter office window as Andrew and two men from moved through Pops' shop despite the preservation order. They were not gutting it, not obviously. They were inventorying. That was the word Andrew used when police arrived. Inventorying evidence. Officer Dean asked them to step outside. Smiled, produced a folder, and said she believed the order allowed access for asset protection. Arrived 12 minutes later, hair windblown, eyes murderous. "If you removed anything," she told Andrew, "I will make your law license wish it had drowned." Ruby whispered, "I love her." Police found 3 boxes in SUV. Old cash envelopes, rent notes, ledgers, and a dented tackle tin Pops used to keep emergency money in. Inside the tin was $5,000 in cash and a note written in block letters. ELLIOT, borrowed again. It was not Pop's handwriting. Even Officer Dean could see that. His face remained perfectly wounded. "I'm trying to protect family records." Held up the fake note with 2 fingers. "By planting them." Andrew coughed. "That accusation is outrageous." Ruby stepped forward. "So is your haircut, but we're all being polite." The officer told everyone to stop talking. They seized the boxes. That should have been the end of it for the day, but had one more knife. She turned to me in front of the officers, Ruby, and half the marina. "Did you ever tell anyone," she said, voice trembling, "that Pops was afraid you would hurt yourself if he didn't leave you something?" The air vanished. My divorce had been bad. There had been a night when Pops drove to my apartment because I was not answering calls. I was not proud of that night. I had not been dangerous. I had been empty. Pops sat on the floor beside me until sunrise and never told a soul. Except a knew. And had told. Moved closer, "Do not answer that." But everyone had heard enough. That was the point. Did not need proof. She only needed a stain. I looked at standing by the police cruiser, pale and silent. "You gave her that?" I asked. He looked away. His face softened with victory. For a moment, shame rose so hard I almost drowned in it. Then Ruby touched my shoulder. "Head up," she said quietly. "That ain't evidence, that's cruelty." She was right. Had mistaken my worst night for a weapon. She did not know Pops had already turned that night into something else. Later, alone in the apartment, the shame tried to come back. It always knows the back door. It told me everyone would now picture me on that floor after my divorce, broken and begging my father to keep me alive. Then I unfolded Pop's letter again. "Staying is work," 4 words. He had turned my lowest night into proof I endured. Had not exposed me. Pops had defended me before I even knew I would need defending. Pops kept letters the way other men kept ammunition. Not many, not sentimental piles tied with ribbon. He saved the ones he thought might matter when people started lying about the past. My mother joked that he would file a sunset if it made a legal point. After tried to use my darkest night against me, I went back to the hospital and told Pops exactly what she had said. His face changed. Not with pity, with rage. The left side of his mouth pulled down. His hand jerked against mine. He blinked once before I asked anything. Yes. You wrote something. One blink. About that night. One blink. It took 16 minutes with the alphabet board. BLUETCKLETIN. Not the one planted. 2 blinks. No. WALLs. I stared at the letters. Whoa. 1 blink. Pop's shop had walls full of mounted lures, old photos, license plates, fish art, and junk tourists called charming. A blue tackle tin could be anywhere. Then he spelled MOMs. Mum's wall. Behind the framed photo of my mother. Obtained supervised access the next morning. Officer Dean, Ruby, and a court clerk stood with us while I lifted Mom's framed photo from the office wall. Behind it was a small recess cut into the paneling. Inside sat a blue tackle tin. The real one. Pop's handwriting was on the label. For when my sons forget who was there. Inside were letters. One to me, one to both of us. The one about my worst night was sealed in an envelope dated 3 years earlier. Asked if I wanted privacy. No, I said. Made it public. Let the truth be public too. I read it aloud in Pop's office beneath my mother's smiling photograph. Had a bad night after the divorce. He did not ask me for money. He did not threaten himself for inheritance. He asked me if being alive could feel less heavy one day. I told him yes, because that is what fathers tell sons, and because it is true. If anyone uses that night to call him weak or greedy, understand this. He stayed. Staying is not weakness. Staying is work. If you are reading this because you let someone twist your brother's pain into a tool, then shame on you twice. Once for the lie, and once for forgetting how many times stayed when you ran. I had to stop. Ruby took the letter and finished it for me. Pops had written about nights I covered shifts when disappeared, about bills I paid quietly, about Mom's chemo rides, about all the boring ways love shows up without applause. He did not make me a saint. He wrote about my stubbornness, my pride, my fear, but he made one thing clear. I had not used pain to manipulate him. Had. Scanned every letter. Officer Dean photographed the recess. Ruby me so hard my ribs protested. Outside, waited near the dock. He had come because told him the blue tin existed. He looked like a man standing outside a house he had burned, hoping someone might still offer him tea. I handed him a copy of Pop's line. Shame on you twice. He read it, his face collapsed. No. His tears came then. Real ones maybe, useless ones certainly. You let her use that, I said. You handed her a wound and watched her call it evidence. I didn't know she would. Yes, you did. You just hoped she'd cut clean. The tide slapped the pilings beneath us. For the first time, did not defend himself. That was not forgiveness, but it was a beginning of truth. Seafood market became very nervous once newspapers learned the phrase forged will. Their first statement said they were unaware of any family dispute. Their second said they had paused renovations out of respect. Their third, released after Ruby shared photos of their men carrying boxes under preservation order, said they were cooperating fully with authorities. Cooperating fully is corporate language for looking for the nearest exit. Their owner, Vale, requested a private meeting with and me. Agreed only if it happened in her office, and every word was recorded. Arrived wearing boat shoes that had never seen a boat. He brought his attorney, a silent woman who took notes and looked angry at him for breathing. Wanted peace too. Peace was apparently on sale that week. We were told the transfer was clean, he said. Represented himself as sole heir and authorized seller. Pops is alive, I said. Blinked, yes, that complicates. No, it clarifies. His mouth twitched. offered to withdraw from the purchase if we waived claims against, asked what had already paid and to whom, glanced at his attorney. She did not save him. A deposit had gone to, a consulting fee had gone to, a facilitation fee had gone to Andrew Pike. Another payment had gone to a company owned by sister for design services that had not yet been performed. His family tree apparently grew invoices. How much did get? I asked. Adjusted his watch, directly or indirectly. That answer told us enough. Demanded documents, resisted. His attorney advised him not to. By the end of the meeting, had agreed to provide transaction records, communications, and payment schedules. Left pale. His attorney left satisfied in the way lawyers are when a client finally chooses self-preservation over stupidity. The records arrived that evening. Had not been supporting plan. She had been running it. Emails showed she contacted 6 months earlier, before Pop's stroke, before any will, before claimed urgent medical necessity. She described the bait shop as an waterfront parcel with sentimental resistance from elderly owner and dependent adult son. Dependent adult son. Me again, reduced to a phrase that made stealing from me sound like cleaning up a mess. She promised clear title after family restructuring. She attached photos of the shop interior, dock measurements, old tax bills, and a draft plan for a seafood market and boutique rentals above it. The apartment where I lived was marked future tasting room. My home had been a design opportunity. The final email before the forged will read, after next week, resistance should be legally manageable. Next week was Pop's stroke. Printed the email and stared at it for a long time. This may not prove she caused the stroke, she said, but it proves she was waiting for him to become manageable. Manageable. That word followed me home. I thought of Pops in the hospital, trapped in a body that would not obey him, while people outside used his silence as a signature. I thought of myself, my divorce, my worst night, my borrowed money, all converted into tools by a woman who saw human pain as leverage. At 10:18 p.m., called. I almost ignored it. Then I answered. I'll testify, he said. Against. His breath shook. Against myself too. I did not praise him. I did not comfort him. I said good. Sometimes justice begins when cowards finally run out of places to hide. Asked to see Pops. Said it was my choice only because the hospital had removed as primary contact and the court had not yet decided formal visitation. I hated having that power. It felt too much like being handed a knife and told to perform mercy. I asked Pops, do you want to see? He closed his eyes. I waited. One blink. Yes. So came on a grey morning with rain pressing against the hospital window. He looked thinner, unshaven, his expensive shirt wrinkled. Was not with him. That alone made the room feel less poisoned. I stood by the door, sat in the corner as witness. Pops watched approach the bed. Stopped 3 feet away. Dad, he said. Pop's left eye remained fixed on him. No softness, no invitation. Began badly. People who have lied for years often do. He talked about pressure, debt, fears, influence, Andrew's advice, the market changing, taxes rising, opportunities slipping away. His words piled up like dead bait. Pops blinked twice. No. Stopped. For the first time in my life, I saw him understand that Pop's silence did not make him easier to fool. It made every lie echo louder. Lowered his head. I helped them move your hand, he whispered. Pops did not blink. I knew you didn't want to sign. I told myself you were confused. I told myself knew what she was doing. I told myself had already taken enough from you. I told myself anything that let me keep going. His voice broke. I waited to call the ambulance because I was scared the papers wouldn't be finished. The room seemed to hold its breath. There it was, the truth in its ugliest clothes. Pop stared at his son. Cried then, not beautifully. Pops once said was an ugly crier, all mouth and shoulders, like grief had to fight its way out of him. I'm sorry, said. I'm sorry, Dad, I'm sorry. Pop's hand moved, slowly, trembling. He lifted one finger toward the alphabet board. I held it up. He spelled with brutal slowness. TALLTHECOURT. Sobbing. I will. Pops blinked twice. No. Froze. Pops continued. TALLEVERYONE. That was Pops. Legal truth mattered. Public truth mattered too. He had spent his life behind a counter where reputation was currency and had spent weeks spending lies in his name. Looked at me. I said nothing. This was not mine to soften. I'll post it, said. I'll say I lied. Pop stared. And I'll testify. One blink. Yes. Then Pops turned his face away, looked as if he had been dismissed from the only home that ever made him real. Maybe he had. In the hallway, he leaned against the wall and cried harder. I stood beside him because old habits are cruel, because he was my brother, because I remembered him at 6 years old, sunburned and laughing with Pops, hat sliding over his eyes. He whispered, "Do you hate me?" Yes. He flinched. I love you too, I said. That's the problem. He covered his face. There was no comfort to offer, not yet, maybe never. Some truths are not doors. They are rooms you have to sit in until you stop choking. Wore white to the public statement. Not pure white, cream, soft, forgiving, a dress chosen by someone who understood cameras. Posted his confession online at noon as Pops demanded. By 12:20, comments were wildfire. By 1:00, announced she would address false and misogynistic allegations outside the bait shop. Ruby called it a funeral for her own reputation. Half the town came. So did a local news crew. The preservation order kept everyone outside. Pop's shop stood behind us with banners still hanging crooked, black marker across it. Ask about the camera. Someone had added, and the wife. Stepped in front of the door and looked directly into the reporter's lens. My husband is under extreme emotional pressure, she said. He is taking blame for a family conflict that began long before I entered this family. She spoke of addiction to victimhood. She spoke of male inheritance entitlement. She spoke of me living above the shop rent-free. She spoke of Pops being old-fashioned and easily influenced. She did not mention moving his hand. She did not mention the tea. She did not mention her email calling my father manageable. Then she turned to me. Has always resented me because I encouraged to become more than bait shop labor. The microphone shifted toward me. Whispered, "Careful." Smiled. She thought she had baited me again. But I had learned. I held up a printed copy of her email. Did you describe Pops as an elderly owner with sentimental resistance? Her face did not move. Did you describe me as a dependent adult son? The reporter's eyes sharpened. Laughed softly. Business language can sound harsh out of context. Did you write that resistance would be legally manageable after next week? A murmur moved through the crowd. Stood near the dock, pale. Ruby folded her arms. Officer Dean watched from beside his cruiser. Sir Turney stepped forward. No further questions. We're not in court, Ruby said. Sadly for you. His eyes flashed. Then she made her mistake. You all act like Pops was helpless, she snapped. He knew the shop was dying. He knew deserved something better than being chained to his father's nostalgia. There she was. Not the grieving daughter-in-law, not the concerned wife, not the woman protecting a family. The woman who hated the life she was trying to steal. The reporter asked, did Pops agree to the sale? Opened her mouth. Before she answered, pressed play on a speaker. The dock camera had no audio, but Ruby's office camera did. His voice came through from the night of the forgery, faint but clear because Ruby's window had been cracked for smoke. He won't fight once the stroke is official. The younger one will look unstable if he objects. The crowd went silent, stared at Ruby. Ruby blew her a kiss. The reporter turned back to, is that your voice? Looked at then Andrew, then the camera. For the first time, she had no line ready. Sirens sounded 2 streets over. Officer Dean approached her. Mrs., we need you to come with us. She lifted her chin. Am I under arrest? Not yet, he said. Ruby leaned close to me and whispered, Everyone keeps saying that to her. It's catching. I should not have laughed. I did anyway. The charges came in layers. Forgery, conspiracy, elder exploitation, evidence tampering, fraudulent transfer, obstruction tied to the boxes tried to remove. Andrew Pike faced professional discipline and criminal charges. Gloria took a plea and agreed to testify. Filed a lawsuit against everyone except Pops, which said was rude but useful. Was charged too. That mattered. Some people expected me to fight for him once he confessed. They thought blood should bend consequence into comfort. Mrs. Talbot from church told me, "He's still your brother." I told her Pops was still his father when he moved that pen. She stopped bringing casseroles. Good, they had too much paprika anyway. Pops improved slowly. Speech came back in fragments. One word at a time, sometimes wrong words, sometimes perfect ones. The first time he said "'s" name, it sounded like a curse dragged through gravel. He began therapy with the fury of a man trying to outlive legal proceedings. His right hand remained weak, but his left could point, squeeze, and once, when online confession played on the hospital television, make a gesture our mother would have slapped him for. I visited every morning. We did exercises, we reviewed legal updates, we watched gulls outside the window. Some days he knew every detail, some days he asked if Mom had opened the shop yet. I answered gently, he hated gentle. One afternoon, he managed 3 words. "Shop still mine." "Yes." His eye closed. Not relief exactly, something deeper. The exhaustion of a man who had held onto a rope until someone else finally tied it off. Prepared for the probate hearing while the criminal cases grew teeth. Pops, real will named both sons, but not equally. The shop and dock were placed into a family trust managed by me and an outside trustee, with allowed future involvement only if no court restrictions remained, and Pops, if living, approved in writing or recorded statement. The apartment above the shop was left to me for life, or until I chose to leave. Received a smaller cash share and Mom's old recipe box, because he needs to learn what feeding people costs. Pops had written that. I laughed when read it, then cried in her office bathroom for 7 minutes. Confession complicated his life and helped Pop's case. He gave investigators passwords, Andrew's payment schedule, and texts showing they delayed calling the ambulance to secure the forged will. He did not spare himself. That did not absolve him. It made his guilt easier to prove accurately. Accuracy became my new religion. Not revenge, not forgiveness, accuracy. Tried to claim coerced her. Then Gloria produced texts. Then Andrew produced emails. Then produced wire records. Predators often survive by making everyone else feel alone. Once the documents stood together, looked less like a mastermind and more like what she was, a thief with good posture. At night, I slept above the shop again, under court permission. The rooms still smelled like dust and salt. I rehung Mom's photo. I replaced the banner with brown paper until the sign could be cleaned. One evening, I sat on the dock beneath the camera and listened to the tide. Ruby joined me with 2 coffees. "You going to reopen?" she asked. "I don't know." "Pops will ask." "I know." "What will you tell him?" I looked at the shop, wounded but standing. "The truth." "Ruby, try not to make a habit of it. People get demanding." The camera blinked red above us. For once, I was grateful to be watched. Probate court is where families learn that paper has a pulse. Every signature, note, date, recording, and stamp sat before judge in neat binders. The forged will, the real will, Pop's letters, Ruby's footage, the dock camera stills, Gloria's notary book, hospital records, emails, confession. Appeared in a dark suit this time. No pearls, no soft colors. Her attorney had learned what costumes did not survive cross-examination. Pops attended by video from the rehab facility. He wore a flannel shirt I brought him and looked furious enough to power a lighthouse. His speech therapist sat beside him. When the clerk asked him to state his name, Pops took 12 seconds. "Frank," he said. Then, after a breath, "I had never loved 2 words more." Walked the court through the night of the forgery. She did not dramatize it. She did not need to. Facts lined up like hooks on a wall. Gloria that Pops refused to sign. Andrew under agreement that pushed for the version and insisted the sale had to close quickly, that he helped move Pops' hand and delayed calling the ambulance. When said that aloud, Pops closed his eyes, watched the judge instead of her husband. She had already cut him loose inside herself. Her attorney argued that Pops had expressed frustration about my dependence, that family dynamics were complex, that believed he was acting in line with what Pops would eventually want. Judge listened with the face of a woman watching someone mop a floor while the roof burned. Then played the doc footage. All of it. In court, silence becomes physical. The room watched Pops slump, watched take the papers, watched hesitate, watched Andrew pack his briefcase, watched Gloria stand uselessly, watched the ambulance come too late to make anyone innocent. Pop's video screen showed only his face. No tears, no softness. Stone. When the footage ended, attorney asked to approach. Judge denied it. Her ruling invalidated the forged will, recognized the later authenticated will, preserved the trust structure, froze proceeds tied to attempted purchase, and referred all testimony to criminal court. She also ordered that no party could represent Pop's wishes without direct court approval while he lived. Then she looked at the screen. Mister, this court recognizes your right to be heard beyond any document created in your name. Pop swallowed. His therapist leaned closer. Pop said one word. Damn. The courtroom laughed before anyone could stop it. Even Judge smiled for half a second. Afterward, tried to approach Pop's video screen, which was absurd and heartbreaking. He stopped himself. Walked past me without looking. At the door, she paused. You think you won, she said. No. That made her turn. I think Pops survived. Her mouth tightened. Winning was the only language she respected, so survival sounded like weakness to her. That was her poverty, not mine. Outside, reporters asked for comment, said the family was grateful for the court's careful review. Ruby said, "Camera beats lies," and walked away before could stop her. That became the headline. Camera beats lies. Pops loved it. He made me print it and tape it to his rehab wall. We reopened Pop's Bait and Tackle on a Saturday because Pop said a Monday opening was for banks and cowards. He was still in rehab, but we set up a video call on the counter where the register used to sit. Ruby brought balloons he hated. The charter captains brought coffee. From the Marina Bakery brought muffins shaped like fish, which tasted better than they looked. Even Mrs. Talbot came by with a casserole and an apology that included specific wrongs, so I accepted both. The sign had been cleaned. Pop's name gleamed in weathered blue paint above the door. Pop's Bait and Tackle. Under it, Ruby taped a temporary paper sign. Forged wills not accepted. Made her remove it before the news crew arrived. The first customer was a little girl buying worms with quarters. I gave her extra because Pops would have. Her father tried to pay more. I told him to tell Pops he caught a fish. That was our advertising model for 40 years, lies traded for loyalty. All morning, people came not just to buy bait, but to see if the place was real again. They touched the counter. They looked at Mom's photo. They glanced at the dock camera like it might judge them. Maybe it did. Did not come. He sent a letter through instead. I read it in the freezer room, where the false back still stood open. He wrote that he remembered stealing Pop's lighter at 14 and blaming me. He remembered Mom making him apologize while I pretended not to care. He wrote that he had been jealous of my usefulness, resentful of my closeness with Pops, and terrified that saw the smallness in him he spent his life hiding. I hated how much of it sounded true. He did not ask to return. He did not ask for forgiveness. He said he would plead guilty to what was true and stop fighting what was documented. At the end, he wrote, I thought getting the shop would prove I mattered. All I proved was that I forgot what the shop was for. I folded the letter and put it in the blue tackle tin. Pops watched from the video screen as customers moved through the shop. His face softened when old Captain Reeve leaned into the camera and said, Frank, your minnows still look depressed. Pops managed like you. The whole shop cheered. For a few hours, Joy did not erase the betrayal, but it sat beside it without asking permission. That was enough. Near closing, Smother appeared outside the window. She did not come in. She stood near the dock in sunglasses, watching the camera above the ice chest. Maybe she was angry, maybe afraid, maybe calculating how much of her daughter's life could still be polished for public sympathy. Ruby walked to the door and flipped the sign to closed right in her face. I should have told her not to. I did not. When the last customer left, I swept the floor alone. The broom caught sand, receipt corners, bait labels, and one small red thread from spanner. I picked it up and threw it in the trash. Then I looked around at the shop. Not restored, not innocent, not what it had been. Still standing. Sometimes that is the only miracle family leaves you. Did not cry at sentencing. That surprised people who had mistaken performance for emotion. She stood before the judge with her chin lifted and read a statement about pressure, misunderstanding, marital influence, and the pain of being. She apologized to anyone who felt hurt. Felt hurt. As if Pops had misunderstood the pen in his hand. As if I had misinterpreted being barred from his hospital room. As if the shop had merely felt stolen. Judge was not moved. The criminal judge was even less moved. He had the dock footage, the emails, the delayed ambulance timeline, the witness statements, and public speech claiming misogyny while standing in front of the very shop she tried to sell. He sentenced her to prison, restitution, probation after release, and a ban from contact with Pops, me, or the bait shop. Andrew Pike lost his license and received his own sentence. Gloria received probation and community service because she early and fully, though Pops said community service should involve cleaning squid buckets with a toothbrush. Stood last. He did cry. I watched from the second row beside Ruby and Pops, attended by video. He had insisted on wearing his old bait shop cap. Did not blame first, that mattered. I betrayed my father, he said. I betrayed my brother. I used old resentments to excuse new crimes. I waited to call help because I wanted paperwork finished. That is the truth. The room stayed silent. I am not asking for mercy from them. I am asking the court to believe that whatever sentence I receive, I will not spend it pretending I was confused about right and wrong. Judge gave him a lesser sentence than but not a gentle one. Cooperation mattered. So did participation. Was taken into custody while I sat still and felt my childhood split from my adulthood with a sound no one else could hear. Pops watched on the screen. His face did not change. Afterward, asked if I was all right. No. Good answer. Outside, reporters waited. I said only one sentence. My father is alive, and his truth is no longer trapped in someone else's paperwork. That line ran in the evening news. Pops called it fancy. Back at the shop, I found a package on the counter, no return address. Inside was Mom's recipe box, the one Pops had left. A note sat on top. He asked me to send this before sentencing. He said he has no right to keep what he never learned from. I opened the box. Mom's handwriting filled index cards, chowder, biscuits, lemon pie, crab cakes, the awful tuna casserole Pops secretly loved. Behind the recipes was a photo of and me as boys on the dock, both sunburned, both holding one small fish between us like a trophy. I wanted to hate him cleanly. He had made that impossible. So had love. I placed the recipe box beside Mom's photograph. Justice had arrived. It did not feel like applause. It felt like a room after a storm, roof still leaking, furniture soaked, but the windows intact. Pops came home to the shop 3 months later. Not home. He moved into an accessible apartment near the rehab center because stairs had become enemies and pride had finally met a doorway it could not bully. But on a bright April morning, I drove him to the harbor in my truck, with Ruby following behind like an escort for a cranky president. When Pops saw the bait shop, he made a sound. Not a word, more like the dock itself had spoken through him. I parked near the ramp. It took 10 minutes to get him from the truck to the wheelchair, another 5 for him to curse the wheelchair, and 2 for Ruby to threaten to push him into the bay if he kept insulting the brakes. Mean, Pop said. Ruby, his shoulder, alive. Inside, the shop went quiet. Customers stepped aside. Captain Reeve removed his hat. Mrs. Talbot cried into a napkin. Pops hated all of it. Buy, he said. Everyone bought something. He rolled behind the counter, left hand resting on the wood worn smooth by decades of elbows, coins, and fish stories. His eyes moved over the walls. Mom's photo, the blue tackle tin, the camera monitor, the temporary legal notices. The new sign insisted we post about trust administration. He pointed to the legal notice. Ugly. Required. Still ugly. He was right. Then he asked for the will. Had warned me Pops might want changes. Capacity was complicated now, but not impossible. With doctors, witnesses, video documentation, and careful review, he could amend certain instructions if he understood them. He understood. It took weeks. The final amendment did not cut out entirely. I expected it to. Part of me wanted it to. Instead, Pops placed a remaining share into a restitution trust for victims of elder exploitation, funded from anything would have inherited after legal debts. If ever completed treatment, restitution, and 5 years without violating court orders, he could request one thing, the recipe box. Not the shop, not money, not the doc. The recipe box. Asked Pops why. He spelled first, then said some words aloud. Food, teachers, cost. I thought of Mom's cards, letter, the boys in the photograph holding one fish between us. That was Pops, hard enough to protect the living, tender enough to leave one locked door with a key hidden somewhere Mercy could find it. He also created a rule for the shop trust. No family member could sell the property without a public meeting, independent appraisal, court approval while he lived, and 30 days for Ruby to object loudly. Ruby framed that clause. The day Pops signed the amendment, properly this time, with doctors and cameras and watching, his hand shook so badly the signature looked like waves. No one moved it for him. When he finished, he looked at me. Mine, he asked. Yes. He looked around the shop. Ours. I swallowed. Yes. He. Not because everything was healed. Because everything was finally named correctly. The dock camera still blinks red above the ice chest. People ask about it now. Tourists think it is part of the shop's charm, like the faded tournament photos and the hand-painted sign that says WORMS are not self-serve because people are disappointing. Locals know better. They glance up at it when they pay in cash, half joking, half confessing. Ruby calls it Saint Camera, patron of inconvenient truth. Pop says that is disrespectful. Then he laughs. His speech improved enough for small insults and large opinions. He spends mornings near the window, telling customers the fish were bigger before the internet. Some days he asks for Mom. Some days he asks why has not come by. Some days he remembers everything and sits quietly with the weight of it until I put coffee beside him and say nothing. Silence can be a mercy when it is not used as a weapon. Writes letters from prison. I read some to Pops, not all. We have rules now, no emotional dumping, no blaming before himself, no asking when he can come home to the shop. When his letters follow the rules, Pops listens. When they do not, I put them in the blue tackle tin unread. Does not write. Good. Tried to rebrand 2 towns over and failed after someone taped camera beats lies to their front door. Ruby denies involvement with the serene confidence of a guilty woman. The bait shop changed. I changed. For years, I thought being the loyal son meant staying available for everyone else's emergencies. Pops' stroke taught me that loyalty without boundaries becomes a door dishonest people learn to pick. Now I keep accounts separate. I document everything. I say no before resentment has to say it for me. Pops told me once that family is not blood. I thought he meant chosen family, friends, people like Ruby. Maybe he did. Now I think he meant something harsher. Family is whoever refuses to use your love as a disguise for theft. One evening in late summer, after the last boat came in and the harbor turned gold, Pops asked me to wheel him onto the dock. We sat beneath the camera while girls fought over a dropped French fry like attorneys over billable hours. Mad, he asked. At who? He gave me a look. Even half paralyzed, Pops could make a stupid question feel expensive. At I asked. One blink. Yes. Yes. At me. The question hurt more. No. He stared out at the water. Should seen. You did see, you left proof. Later. Still proof. His left hand found mine on the wheelchair arm. His grip was weaker than it had been before the stroke, but it was there. Good son, he said. I closed my eyes. For most of my life, I had wanted those words without needing them. Now that I had them, they felt less like a reward and more like a release. The camera blinked above us. I thought about turning it off, letting the doc go unwatched, letting the shop breathe without a witness. Not yet. Maybe never. Some cameras are not there because you distrust everyone. Some stay because the truth deserves a porch light. We sat until the first stars appeared. Pops dozed. The tide lifted the boats. Inside the shop, Ruby closed the register and cursed at a receipt roll. Ordinary sounds. Hard-won sounds. I looked up at the little red light and smiled. The camera had caught a forged will, yes, but it had also caught something else. It caught the moment I stopped begging liars to admit what the evidence already knew.